Welcome back to Standout Medical Careers, the series of conversations with doctors and healthcare industry experts about medical career motivations, choices, challenges, and fulfilment. I'm Anita Fletcher. In today's episode, we meet Emma Gordon. Emma is the Director of Elective Recruitment. Elective recruitment are experts in building unique and varied career pathways for doctors around Australia. It's a person-centred recruitment consultancy focused on career progression and well-being for all doctors. Before we hear about Emma's work, I'd like to remind you that if you want notifications of when I release a new episode, or if you want to get a free checklist to help you create applications that stand out, go to the Standout Medical Careers website and sign up for my newsletter, standoutmedicalcareers.com.au. Hi Emma, great to see you. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Anita, for having me. It's nice to be here.
I know that you have a wealth of experience in medical recruitment, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your insights on how doctors can navigate alternative options if they miss out on their first preference of role or specialty. So can we start by sharing with our audience some of your story and how you assist doctors with employment options?
Sure. So I'm from Elective Recruitment. We are a doctor recruitment agency, so we just work with doctors in the healthcare space. Personally, I have been recruiting doctors in Australia since 2008 when I relocated here from the UK. So literally hundreds and hundreds of doctors I've placed over the years into various positions in public and private organisations. And the role of a recruitment agency within the medical space is twofold. So on one side, we help the hospitals or our clients to find doctors that they can't find themselves. And then on the flip side, we assist doctors to access opportunities that they may not have access to or be aware of within their own networks or interstate and things like that. So where we sort of come in for the doctor is we can give them options that are perhaps outside of their specialty if they're thinking of making a change or if they're thinking of relocating, or if perhaps they didn't get the first option and they hadn't considered something else, then we can advise them on what else is out there in the market. But I think it's an important point to make that we don't work on all the roles. So that's not something that an agency does, particularly with the non-specialist positions as the campaigns for annual recruitment go through the process. If there are gaps identified at the end of that process, then an agency might come in and partner with the hospital to help facilitate those gaps, or we might help outside of campaign. So if term 2 or term 3 people have gone off to training or maternity leave or whatever and gaps appear then agencies might be able to help, but generally as part of the annual campaigns, that's not when an agency comes in to assist.
Okay, great. That's really, really helpful. When we sat down recently and decided to talk about this topic, it was off the back of an article I recently published about the reality of what a competitive marketplace medicine is for both training and employment positions, and how important it is to have a plan B. What is some of your recommended strategies and tools for people to have at their disposal for when they don't get their ideal role?
So I've thought about this a lot actually since we last spoke about it, and often it's not plan B, it's still plan A, just a different way to get there. There are some circumstances where you may need to change complete direction. If you've applied for specialty training several times and you come into the end of that road, then it's important to consider the other options. And of course, there are lots of other options out there. But often I think it's not uncommon for doctors not to get on first time. We see that a lot. And it's not uncommon for someone not to get their first choice. But I think the most important thing is to learn from that process, and seek feedback. If your application was not successful, find out why. What did the other candidates have that perhaps you were lacking in terms of experience or qualifications or research, or what can you do to strengthen your application next time? And then what can you be doing in the next 6 to 12 months to facilitate that and bridge that gap? So I think it's crucial to speak to the interview panel, or the consultants who were involved, or even your own consultants if you've got mentors within your team, to find out what you can do to enable you to get on next time round.
Right. Yeah, it's great advice. And what I find actually, and I love the distinction you made between the plan A and the plan B, because people do have repeated attempts at their plan A because they've invested so much in that. But the other thing that I hear a lot is it's incredibly frustrating for a lot of candidates because often there is no feedback. So they're in a bit of a vacuum in a ways, but what you said then about, so talk to people who know you and get their feedback so that you've got, and potentially talk to other people as well, to just sort of try and keep piecing together what is it that I need to work on, why aren't I scoring high enough in those interviews.
And that's the key, is to seek that feedback. No one's going to come and give it to you voluntarily. No one cares about your career, only you do, really, mostly. You need to go out and make and ask those questions.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the self-reflection is really important. And a lot of doctors I speak to say, that they thought they were prepared, and then when they went through the process, they realised they had a whole lot more preparation that they needed to do. So one of my tips actually is for people to really not, definitely don't wait until you're sort of 2 weeks out of your interview to start preparing. You can be preparing at any time for an upcoming interview. And I also encourage people to be prepared anyway with the messages and information they want to get across for unexpected opportunities that might arise. And then there's, of course, the importance of kind of networking with others. So, both of us have met people, and we still do meet people who've been in these situations. And what are your thoughts on relationship building and sort of networks that our listeners may not be aware of?
So I think relationships are obviously key, and I think a lot of the relationships and the networks come before the interview. I think there's a lot to be said for reaching out to the hospital or the department that you're applying to ahead of the interview. It shows you're enthusiastic. It shows that you're doing your research and your due diligence. I think, as a recruiter, a lot of the feedback that I get or have got over the years is that it's a huge detractor when someone goes for a job interview and they come across as they just want a job, like any job.
Yeah.
So, showing that they have made an effort to find out about the service, find out about who they're working with, and, make an introduction pre-interview goes a long way. It's that personal side. Obviously, the clinical part of the interview is hugely important as well. But the interview panel want to know that you're going to fit in and be, a valuable member of that team. And just by showing interest and enthusiasm for working with these people, goes a long way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's also for that candidate, it's really important to walk in, and then it's less mysterious for them if they've seen the setting, they've seen a few faces around, and then when they get to interview, they might have a few familiar faces in the interview as well. Because there's a very strong human aspect to this. It's not about just as you said, it's the people. Are you going to be a good fit within that team? aside from then, the skills. It's not just about your skills and your education and training. They can see a lot of that on your CV, but it's those meetings are all important. And I think that, a lot of people are quite successful when they do build relationships with people and get to know people, and they've got a good reputation that can only ever stand you in good stead, I think. And that's something that we all build up over time.
Yeah, and on the job advertisements, there's always a contact person.
Right.
Call them, say, hey, I've been shortlisted for an interview. I just wondered if I could have 5 minutes, or if you could put me in touch with someone where I can just find out a bit more about the service.
Yeah.
It's impressive,
Yeah.
you're taking your time out of to prepare yourself for the interview and showing an interest in what's going on.
Yeah.
And I know that the job and the training position is really important. But if you're going to be somewhere for 2-3 years, then it's important that you're a good fit. So showing that initiative definitely goes a long way.
Yeah. And, it's also possible to Google that hospital, that department, see the people who are working there online, read up about them. And I really find LinkedIn is an incredibly powerful tool that I think is underutilized by a lot of people. And it doesn't mean that you have to be on there every day, but you can go and look up, okay, who are all the gastroenterologists working in Australia or that have a LinkedIn profile. And I do this a bit with my clients and say, look, if you don't have a strong network, here's one way to start. Connect and get familiar with who are the other people who are either doing the job that you're doing or doing the job that you want to do in the future. Because often I had a client I was talking to the other day, actually, and she told me about her future interests in surgery and really wanting to develop her robotic surgery skills and looking at doing a fellowship in the UK. And she said, oh, well, no one at my current workplace has any interest in that. And they all look at me like, why do you? And I said, well, go into LinkedIn, find the people who've done that fellowship and connect with them, because you've got something in common and they've been through the process that you want to go through. So that I
And
find,
people are generally willing to share advice and things like that. If you reach out, at my job, I reach out for advice all the time
yes,
to like really senior heads of department, professors, and I'm like, hey, I've got this country hospital, they need help. Where can I find the right people? And they're generous with their time. These are the busiest people in the country, I think, and they'll still give you 5-10 minutes of advice. The people are generous.
yes, I couldn't agree more. They're happy to help and share information, and if they don't have the answers, they will direct you to the people who do have the answer or can help in some other way. So, are there any other sort of particular contacts or organisations that you direct people to, or broadly that's your approach?
I mean, obviously, people like yourself, Anita, in order to prepare for interviews and things like that, and working on that plan A and how to get there. And there may be a 12, 24-month plan to get there. And I think some people are really lucky, and they know what they want to do coming straight out of medical school, and they want to be a surgeon, and they've always wanted to be a surgeon. And they're doing PhDs in their internship and stuff just to make sure that the CV is ready. But a lot of people don't know what they want to do, and they want to try a few terms and things like that. And I think that's probably where you get to PGY3 and you think, right, okay, maybe I'm going to go into medicine or whatever, and then they need to start strengthening their applications. So I would definitely advise them to speak to someone like yourself for career guidance and how to get there and map out that plan.
Yes, yeah. And I think I say that too, start early. I love having the chance when I speak to medical students, because I know a lot of the doctors in training I've met in the past have said, I wish I knew this when I was at medical school. Uh, in fact, I met a medical student last week at Northern Beaches Hospital, and when I said to him, right, here's a few things to think about and always pursue your areas of interest to do those additional activities. And he looked at me with a very blank face and said, I had no idea that, and I am just focused on my medical degree, and that's as it should be, but also being aware of some of the other requirements, essentially, that you're going to need further down the track, or activities that are really going to help you in the longer run. It's really helpful. And look, on the subject of recruiters, in my experience, some people are concerned that talking with a recruiter or being active on social media, such as LinkedIn, might alert their current employer that they're looking elsewhere. What are your thoughts on that?
For senior doctors, sure. I've gone through the recruitment process with consultants who, they can't let their colleagues know that they're entertaining another position because their own department is short-staffed, and politically it would be a bit of a risk for them. But certainly for juniors or registrars or whatever, all the positions are fixed term. Everybody's supporting them in their career, so I don't think there's any harm in connecting with a recruiter to find out what's out there and to be aware of what's in the market. And it's entirely confidential what you discuss with a recruiter. Being connected to somebody on social media or LinkedIn doesn't really mean anything.
Mhm.
People are famously conservative when it comes to social media profiles and whatnot, particularly as they get more senior. They don't want the patients to find them and stuff for obvious
Yeah,
reasons.
yeah.
But in terms of being in a recruitment network, everything is strictly in confidence anyway, so there's no issues there. And part of what we do is protect the doctor's privacy. So, for example, if we were to put forward a doctor to a hospital, we remove all of the personal details from the resumes, including references. Often, not trying to do it in a derogatory way or anything, but if somebody sees a referee on the CV and they think, oh, I know him, I'll call him, without that person knowing that this person was looking for a job, it can cause problems. So we just remove that,
Yeah.
and then we control that process. And at the point of referencing, then the doctor has the opportunity then to speak to the referee, out of courtesy, and say, hey, I'm going through this, would you mind being a reference for me? So um, we try and protect that privacy in all aspects as well.
Yeah. Great, thanks. I'm sure people will be really reassured, and it's helpful for them to understand what the process is, because, you and I can take for granted what we do every day, but often people don't have those insights. And on the point of LinkedIn, for everyone out there, you can adjust your settings in LinkedIn so that, say, for example, you only allow your full profile to be seen by your connections. So that's how people can sort of control that aspect about other people who they're not connected with, say, for example, patients or others. Uh, so we've all got that level of control over our how public our profiles are. So that's bearing in mind as well. And Emma, what do you think people have got to gain from engaging with a recruiter? And are there any downsides?
Well, no, I don't think there are any downsides, obviously, but I'm biased. I mean, you've got someone who's giving you access to market intelligence and information, and who's advocating for you and your career. And I think, particularly as you move up the ladder and you are in a situation where you need to keep things a bit more confidential, like I recruit in some really niche areas and everybody knows everybody. So if somebody was interested in a position, but they wanted to know a bit more information without putting in an expression of interest, a recruiter can go to that client and say, I need to know how many consultants there are, what's the shift pattern, or whatever the questions may be, without anybody needing to know who's asking. So you can
Mhm.
have the full information without then sharing your details until you're comfortable in doing so. So,
Mhm.
we're very clear in our approach that we never send anybody's details to anybody without their express knowledge and consent. So, if we are aware of an opportunity, we will give it to the doctor, and only when they're comfortable in us facilitating an introduction, then that happens.
Mm-hmm. Gee, I wish I'd known that 30 years ago. I can tell you now, because I remember I didn't understand how recruiters worked earlier on in my career, and I can relate to that sense of, oh, I don't want my employer knowing. Well, they won't know, because you've got your ethics, your ethical approach that you're abiding by.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And we appreciate the sensitivity. And, particularly if you're in a short staff department,
Mm,
nobody wants to think that someone's going to leave if you're already doing loads of overtime. You know what I mean?
yes.
So,
Yeah.
mhm.
And I'm so impressed with the way you sensitively understand the situation and work with people and manage them. So I think you're a fantastic resource for people to even have a chat with.
Yeah, and
Um,
we can provide not just jobs, but information. If you
yes.
were moving from Victoria to Queensland and you wanted to understand the salary scale, the enterprise bargaining agreements in different states and things, we can give you the advice on that. We've got access to partnerships with people like yourself, also with financial advisors. So, for doctors coming in from overseas, and they've got pensions and taxes and properties and things, then that is not our realms of expertise. So we call in our partners. We partner with an insurance provider who works on medical indemnity insurance, insurance for private practices, setting up a private practice. Our financial guys can do that. We've got migration partners who can assist with visas if that was a concern. Relocation specialists, you name it. Like we can't do everything.
Mm,
Our specialty is recruitment, but we realise that moving your life from either one state to another, or even from across town from one side to the other, requires a bit of logistical planning. So we have partnerships in place to help with that as well.
mm. Yeah, and that's so helpful. And I think sometimes people feel like they have to do everything by themselves. And they realise it's a much easier road when you pick up the phone and make an inquiry with whoever is the best person or organisation to work with to help with that pathway, because you've
And that's what
got that
recruiters do.
understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, we are connectors.
Yes, and that's it. Like me, you're in Sydney, but you work nationally, and you've got that really deep and long experience across the country, understanding what the medical recruitment situation's like, and that was a great point about understanding what the agreements are in different states, because often people don't really give it much thought. A lot of people sign their employment agreement, don't really read through it in that much detail. They want the job, they get the job, they're happy with the pay rate, off they go. And it's only when things are changing that, say, they're moving state. I can remember my days in the AMA, people would ring and say, look, I've got all this leave in New South Wales. Can I take it to Queensland? Those sorts of things. So I appreciate you have a good level of understanding about those things.
Yeah, well, they're important things that, like you say, don't get considered until the last minute.
Yes, until you need to know. And Emma, what's next for you? Would you like to share any personal goals or exciting new projects on the horizon for elective recruitment?
Wow, I don't know. I mean, there's lots of exciting new projects. We're a reasonably new business, so we're in a constant period of innovation and change. So watch this space. There's lots of new tech and interesting access points for our networks,
Mhm.
and we'll be rolling that out to health services and to doctors over the coming months. So.
Yeah, fantastic. And it's great to have you included in our monthly newsletter now with 4 of the top hot jobs that are going around. So we've started including that. And I'll do a quick plug if anyone would like to subscribe to the Standout Medical Careers monthly newsletter, you can do that via the website. And so, Emma, thank you so much for sharing your insider knowledge to help inform our listeners about some of the options and strategies for winning roles. How can listeners learn more about you or get in touch?
So, look, I mean, we're open to having a conversation, confidential conversation with anybody at any time. There's no obligation to sign up for alerts with us or anything like that. If you just want some market intel or you want to find out what's out there, then we're always available. So, our website is elective.com.au, or if anybody wanted to reach out to me personally, then they can get me at emma@elective.com.au.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thanks again, Emma. Great to see you, and I'm sure this has been really helpful to a lot of people listening.
Thanks for having me, Anita. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode of Standout Medical Careers. If you like the episode or think it will be useful to someone else, please leave a review at podchaser.com. And if you've got any questions, let me know on LinkedIn at Standout Medical Careers. And remember, the better you articulate your story, the more you will stand out.